Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan. My name is Fred Varco, a former director of the club, and without any doubt at all, its best footballer. Today we're very privileged to have Mr. Andrea Agnelli and Edgar representing Juventus Football Club with us. Mr. Agnelli is a director of Exor, which controls Juventus and Fiat and the rest of Italy. And
that was a bit
has worked in England, France, Switzerland, and Italy. And Edgar Davids, as you probably know, is a famous footballer, has played for Ajax, Juventus, Inter, AC Milan, Spurs, Crystal Palace, Barcelona, and last but not least, as a former resident of Barnet FC in London. He spent 7 years with Juventus, has won 74 caps for the Netherlands, and won 3 league titles with Ajax and Juventus. And we're very honored to have them here today. Prior to their talk, we will have a short video. So if you're ready for that, we will begin. Thank you very much. Okay. We'll start first with Mr. Agnelli. If you could say a few words and explain why you're here. Thanks.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, first and foremost. And I would like to excuse ourselves for the little delay, but it was due to me just landing today and then rediscovering, as I've been missing out on Tokyo for quite some time rediscovering the Tokyo traffic. So please do excuse us for the little delay in this. It is clearly, for myself personally, representing Juventus FC, a great pleasure to be able to speak in front of you, the Foreign Correspondent Club of Japan, and explain the reason why we are here today. Before getting into the reasons why we're here, it's just an honor for me to be back in Japan. Japan has been a common denominator in my life, as my father had some very, very strong ties with Japan, having founded the Italy-Japan Foundation and being part of the committee of the Imperial Prize for a number and variety of years. So my life has been kind of always tick-tocked with Japan and the values of Japan. It would be diminishing to the country, but the faith, the admiration that my father had for this country have been passed on to me. Japan is a country that has been also a common denominator for myself, starting from my early and young age when I was here on holiday, just a 15, 16-year-older, and having had the possibility of visiting Japan some 20-odd years ago and discovering what Japan was really about, and having visited many times since then. It is my first time, though, here in Japan, in my full capacity as chairman of Juventus. Juventus obviously has had and still has some very strong ties with Japan, by having been one of the pioneers clubs in developing football in Japan from an international standpoint. I do have memories of the 1985 game, even though I wasn't here. It was one of the, in the founding parts of the Intercontinental Cup. Juventus has been here, has won twice, and I remember the 1996 game also, when I was instead present and had the possibility of cheering to a great victory that claimed Juventus as the world champion here in Tokyo for the Toyota Cup. It's been, since then, it's been some growing up on my side, there's been some growing up on Juventus' side, and we've passed on some very difficult moments within Italy, and especially with the family businesses, if I look back at the early 2000s. The early 2000s saw the passing away of both my uncle Gianni Agnelli and my father Umberto Agnelli, practically passing on the leadership to the next generation, which is myself, my cousin John Elkan, and Alessandro Nasi. We've been talking amongst ourselves, and we decided to reiterate once again the importance of what is the meaning of Juventus, and henceforth the fact that one of the family was due to take charge. I've always been passionate about sports. I think Edgar has many memories of me being a bit younger, passing about the pitch. But I've been also involved with golfing. Prior to that, I've worked 4 years at Philip Morris, and I was responsible for motorsports, Formula One, and MotoGP. So I mean, my passion for sports management has always been there, and so it was me that 4 years ago took charge of Juventus. Why did I say reiterate? The ownership of Juventus dates back to 1923, so it's 91 years of ownership by the family of Juventus, making us the longest lasting ownership of any sports franchise globally. And that obviously enough, it's an element of great pride. Moving back to the reasons why of the trip here to Japan and to my presence here in Japan. Obviously enough, Japan is a tremendously important market. And that is recognized by us. We had in the recent past some problems both on and off the pitch. And after having taken charge back in 2010, there were a variety of priorities that needed to be addressed before thinking of internationalizing again the brand. And by saying a lot of issues needed to be addressed, it was a full change of management, practically a full change of squad from the 2010-2011 squad to date, and re-bring Juventus to a financial sustainable position. I think much of that has been achieved, and what you've seen on the screen a few moments ago has brought back Juventus to the successes by winning the league 2 years ago and last year, and making us at this point in time 11 points clear from second place, and aiming at, even though it's going to be extremely challenging going forward, at the third Scudetto victory in a row, which would make it a first time since Second World War, as no Juventus has ever won 3 titles in a row, if not the one back in the 30s from 1930 to 1935 that won 5 leagues in a row. But obviously enough, we're going before Second World War there. Having addressed a variety of problems together with my team, we decided to make the next move forward, which is internationalizing the brand. Japan is clearly a very important market, which saw Juventus' presence and love for the Juventus brand extremely strong if I look back at the 80s, the 90s, and probably the early 2000s. Then there has been a decline in terms of fan base, and if I look at the data since 2004 to date, we've lost some 3.5 million fans here in Japan. And it's something that we thought it was of particular importance to address and tackle, given the importance of the market, given the importance of the leadership of Japan within the Asia-Pacific environment. When we talk about Asia-Pacific, often enough within global companies, Japan is ticked off because it merits to be a region by itself, and so it deserves all the importance of being tackled directly. Hence, my presence here with Edgar today, who's a great player of Juventus. As I was saying, we are, and you saw it at the end of the video, we are later today opening a J Lounge, which is going to be a moment of full immersion of Juventus for the next 45 days in the heart of Tokyo. And that's going to be a first stint to rejuvenate the values of the brand here. But my presence doesn't stop, obviously, at the J Lounge Cafe this evening, even though I'll be proudly opening the J Lounge. But I have meetings with the president of the Japan Football Federation, and I will be meeting tomorrow the president of Tokyo Football Club, together with a meeting tomorrow morning with the Italian ambassador, and trying to understand how the values of Juventus, how the values of sports can tie up once more successfully with this country. So I would say my reason to be here, it's more of an institutional mission in order to ensure that we tie back once again with the decision-making people of the country within my industry and my sport. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. And Edgar, if you'd like to make some comments, perhaps as a legend of Juventus, maybe from the footballing side.
How does this go down? Doesn't go down. How does this has to go down? I see my face. First of all, good evening to everybody. I think for me to be here is always a great pleasure. It's not the first time. I've been here many times for a lot of good opportunities. I've been here to play. I've been here to go on holidays. And now again, I'm happy to be here to represent Juventus. And I think that now Juventus is on the stage where they can rebrand themselves, as we are now, again, what Andrea already told you, maybe in a historical moment to win 4 titles. And I think that we have to really close the ties with Japan, as it's very important for us, for a fan base, but also to show the, how can I say, the beauty and the family-based or family-orientated Juventus that is a big family. And I think that is also very different with other cultures of football. So that's more kind of mechanical in the distance. And we have the image of being a family-based football club. And what Andrea already mentioned is that it's one of the longest family-orientated businesses of sport franchises. And that's why we are here to go to represent Juventus at the J Lounge, and to show people and also to engage Japan once again to be a part of the legendary Juventus family. And that's why my presence is here, to show and also engage the Japanese to embrace again Juventus, as I think is one of the most beautiful clubs and also family-orientated clubs. And I think it's also represent a winning mentality and also a beautiful brand. And I think that the Japanese once again are going to be excited and show love for Juventus.
Okay, thank you, Edgar. We'll throw the floor open now for questions and answers. If you have a Keitai mobile phone, can you turn it off or turn it to silent mode? And when you come up to the microphone for your question, please state your name and affiliation if you have one. And if your question is directed at Mr. Agnelli or Edgar Davids. First up, please raise your hand.
Ryan Roth, freelance. There's been a lot of talk around Europe about financial fair play and containing debts within football clubs. And what do you think about the new regulations that have been proposed, as well as your thoughts on Manchester City, Paris Saint-Germain with their massive cash injections, which are unsustainable? And my last point is your thoughts on Monaco and their tax haven status, making things unfair for them when it comes to player wages. Thank you.
For who's that?
Who's the question? Okay. Well, first and foremost, I also sit in the executive board of ECA, the European Club Association, chaired by Mr. Rummenigge. And I think both personally and as a member of ECA, ECA has sustained and has fully sustained financial fair play since it was first thought of. It clearly, we're getting into the first year of the application of the financial fair play. The past 3 years have been study years, and they will not bring into the calculations of the break-even rule with a 45 million potential loss within the 3 years ahead of us. I think we've sustained financial fair play. I think there's been a lot of fine-tuning being done to it. We were sitting in Barcelona a couple of days ago revising the next club licensing and financial fair play guides, which should be approved by May this year, and henceforth be the first financial fair play and club licensing regulations that will apply in the first year of financial fair play being under observation. It's clearly very important that all that has been done in order to put in place financial fair play will find a follow-up and follow-through in the execution of financial fair play. There's obviously a lot of speculation about related parties' transactions, and I think you were referring to those when you talk about Paris Saint-Germain. And there are obviously commissions which have to analyze that. We all have certain views about what a related party transaction and what fair value of those transactions should be like. I think we have to leave the financial fair play commissions at work. We have to have faith in their work, and we will. And I'm quite sure they'll deliver the right analysis of the various P&Ls and balance sheets of the teams. Not so much balance sheets. What we're really looking at is the P&Ls, is the profit and losses on the year by year. Regarding Monaco, there's not much to say. I mean, Monaco has been in Monaco for forever. I mean, obviously enough, nowadays it's not so much their fiscal advantages, but is the particular situation in which France itself has found with the taxation of salaries over $1 million, which is not only applicable to football, but is applicable to any industry. I think, personally, it's fair that if you live within an environment, you should have the most level playing field possible. So if I was to transpose that for clubs such as Juventus, such as Paris Saint-Germain, such as Manchester United, such as Barcelona, and such as Bayern Munich, what we should all be working at is not so much about the differences within the single countries, but is harmonizing within Europe so as that the fiscal pressure, for example, if we stick to that matter, is the same and applicable to all teams participating at European level. Obviously enough, differences bring to an unfair level of competition, which is also analyzed through restatement of accounts for the financial fair play, doesn't give a proper evaluation of how people are actually managing the clubs. I mean, you should actually start by a level playing field and then restate the numbers over a level playing field. I think this should be in the interest of European football as a whole.
Next question, please.
Hello, my name is Robbie Sauvet. I'm a Dutch football coach in Japan. I have a question for Edgar. What will be your next step in your coaching career?
My next step in my coaching career will be a bit on hold, as I'm more thinking about representing Juventus and exploring those possibilities in the future, and with them explore how we can benefit those capabilities, maybe in Juventus and maybe on the football field. But I don't see myself yet coaching.
Okay, I'll take the next question to Andrea and Edgar. In terms of branding, one of the best things you could do is to have a Japanese player on your team. And there's been a number of successful Japanese in Italy with Nakamura, Nagata, Nagatomo, now Keisuke Honda. Is that something you've been looking at from maybe not a branding point of view, but a footballing point of view? Perhaps, Andrea, you could answer that. And perhaps, Edgar, you could maybe comment a little on the success of some of the Japanese players in Italy.
But yes, it is. I mean, obviously enough, if you want to put a spotlight from a foreign country into a team in a different country, having a player coming from that country, it's the easiest way forward. I think Japan, especially in the recent years, I would say since 2010 onwards, has started again to deliver some excellent in football talents. We can think about Honda has joined AC Milan right now. We can think about Kagawa. I think Nagatomo at Inter Milan it's a superb left back. So we're looking at that. You also have to put things into perspective and understand where we're coming from, and we have to take our recent history, 2010 to date. As I was saying before, there's been a complete changeover of the squad, and we were looking, at a certain moment, we had a first year in management where we hit a second, 7th place, coming from a 7th place before I took charge of the office. Even though they're 2 7th places, they're completely different. One is end of a cycle, one is the start of a cycle. What we actually really needed, and we thought we needed, and when I say we, I mean the general manager, Giuseppe Marotta, I mean the sports director, Fabio Paratici, and I mean Pavel Nedved, to whom most, if not all of the credit for putting together the lineup should be given to, has been to focus on players that have had successes in the history. I mean, winning, it's difficult. You need to know how to win, and I think Edgar can get more into this. You need to have players with that kind of experience. So much of the credit, if not most of the credit, must be given to these 3 people I've nominated, together with the director of the orchestra on the pitch, our coach Antonio Conte.
Edgar, perhaps you could comment?
I think that the most important thing is if you select a player, that he has the qualities, and it's the best for the player, and it's also the best for the team, and also for your brand. That you only want the best in your team, and not be a marketing puppet. Of course, there have been great talents in Japan, and I think there are some great talents still to discover here. But unfortunately, they didn't play for Juventus. But we will not say that it won't be. But there's always a chance for them to play for Juventus, because Juventus play or select only the best players, or also all players that fit the system. And I think that is the most important thing, is that they fit the system. And if that player is available, I think that Juventus will definitely make a move to acquire such a player. But if not, we will not be a team that will do everything for marketing purposes, and that's why we are a successful club and also a serious club, because I think that sometimes, commerce is bigger than actual what the facts, and I think that it's very important for us to. What Andrea already said, we have 3 capable people who created a rebirth of Juventus, and they're doing the job well. And I think that if there is a talent in Japan, they will be discovered and will definitely be playing for Juventus.
Okay, thank you. Next question, please. Raise your hand if you want to ask a question. Anybody out there? Andrew?
Andrew McCurdy from the Japan Times. It's a question for Edgar. How long do you think Alessandro Del Piero can continue playing? And when he finishes playing, do you think he would? Do you think management is something that he would be good at and something that he would like to do?
First of all, I know him very well, but I think that Alessandro Del Piero does know himself the best, better than everybody else, I hope. And so he can only answer the question if he needs to stop or needs to play, and it's his own decision. But I think that Ale can be of great asset for a team as in the director position, whatever. But I think that a lot of things, by doing that, you have to also think about that you need to, how can I say, get some experience. Because you can't stop one day and then be a director the other day. You need to have experience, and he's bright, he's very intelligent. So he knows when the time is right, and only he can answer the question if he wants to be some director or manager somewhere.
Thank you. Any more questions from the floor?
Hi. I was just wondering, what other countries apart from Japan are you looking at having more of a presence in, or trying to branch out with Juve? If you're in Bangkok, you have, say, Barcelona has a presence there, etc. Is it just Japan you're looking at, or other Asiatic countries or Asian countries? Thank you.
Obviously, enough. There are different markets which are tackled in different ways. What's important is the common denominator, which that is Juventus. We can tackle different markets both by scouting purposes, by marketing purposes, or by commercial purposes. I think what we're looking at the moment, it's macro areas. Japan is definitely one of those, and that goes for the institutional relations and for the importance of the market. We are closely looking at some fan-based countries, and that's Indonesia is certainly one of them, where Serie A still has a great leadership in terms of following by the country, and that applies to Australia as well. We're looking at India and China with different respects. I mean, that's China. We're looking and we're tackling it mostly through digital media, I think, where there is a great interest in terms of what's happening, and the whole of the Arab Peninsula, which it's of great interest to us. Those are the markets that we are actually looking at the most. We don't have at the moment. We haven't got anything planned specifically for South America or for the United States of America. We've been going there quite often in the past, but if I was to look at core markets at the moment, I'd be looking at those. We do have the knowledge that we are a truly global brand, and we do have the knowledge that we are followed in every single country by smaller groups or bigger groups. But what we discuss internally is that we have to target and go by priority. So if I'm not mentioning any countries, not because we don't believe they're not important for us, it's I believe that we have to prioritize and deliver on some markets, which then will open up others. But we do have the understanding that together with another 10, 15 teams. We are the truly 10, 15 global teams, and we are very honored and proud to be part of that, which comes through our history. But what we're targeting at the moment is really those markets.
Just to follow that up, how important is it that Japan has very close ties with Italy, both on the sporting side and on commercial side? How important is it to have that in Japan, and to be a representative not only of Juventus, perhaps, but also of Italy?
Sorry, how?
How important is it that Japan has very close ties and is very... Italian goods are very popular in Japan.
Yeah, no, but it is important. I mean, Japan is a very sophisticated market. It's a market that has a search for excellence. So Italian and the made in Italy are clearly two elements that have stroke the market. It is important. It helps. But when we're talking about football, it is not necessary, because the passion is not necessarily about the affordability or the capacity to spend. It's also about the true passion and what you've done in the past. So it is important, but it's not fundamental in making the decision.
Next question, please. Joel, you want to ask a question? Joel? Andrew?
For Edgar again, how well do you think Japan can do at the World Cup this summer?
No, they're an okay squad. They're organized very well, but still, the World Cup is the World Cup, and sometimes you need a bit of luck. If you look at 2000, Korea did very well unexpectedly, and something like that can also happen to Japan, and it's always difficult to say how a team is going to do in the World Cup, but there's always a possibility to be a dangerous outsider.
Yep.
Hello, this is from Hong Kong Cable TV, and this is a question to Edgar. It will be your birthday next week, and I want to know your birthday wish and what's your goal in your 40s, and also what do you expect from the Netherlands team in the coming World Cup? 2 questions. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. to be fair, now most of the time I don't celebrate my birthdays, but it's always nice to be with family. That's one thing, and so then I don't have any wishes left, because I think that I've been blessed a lot for the teams I've played with. And your second question, I hope that the Dutch team will do very well on the World Cup. But what I said before, you never know what's going on. If you look at the last results of a big tournament for the Dutch, it wasn't very well, although they had the squad to do so. So then you see that it's not only the players, but it's also being a team, and that's what we learned also Juventus, being a team. So it's not like being on paper having the best players, but having the best team is very important, especially on the World Cup. And one thing that always comes to mind when I see a World Cup is most of the teams who win it, they grow into the tournament, and I hope for the Dutch they do well.
Next question. Obvious question. Are we going to see Juventus playing in Japan?
Well, that's one of the most difficult aspects, and that's why we have to invent different tools to bring a team to a specific country. I mean, we have very limited time out of the official season calendar if you take into account what's the club's calendar and the national team's calendar. If you think about the past 3 seasons, this year we're going to have the World Cup. Last year we had the Confederation Cup, and the year before we had the European Cup. Now we proudly give to national teams something between 12 and 15 players. That means even the summer tour, the after-season tour, is extremely complicated to put together, because if we were to come with our youth team, it wouldn't have the same attraction as it has the first team. Japan is clearly a place that we would like to come and play. It is not that easy. I think we'll try our utmost. This year we're going to be touring in Australia. We were there. Edgar was there with my colleagues a couple of weeks ago presenting the summer tour. We're clearly thinking about the possibility of coming over here, but it's not evident. That calls clearly for some reforms also within the Italian system that allow other teams such as the Spanish teams or else that have a B team to be able to do much more of those pre-season and post-season touring because of the fact of having about 50 players with them playing in two different leagues, make it the main league or the second division league. If we had that together with about 10, 12 players of the first team, it would certainly be more attractive and more possible to tour more rather than the less we're doing at the moment because of a, rightly so, team lineup of about 25 players.
Just following that up, do you see changes within Italy or within Europe, or the individual leagues, and also the possibility of a European Super League? Is that ever going to happen?
But with respect to Italy, it's been something I've been working on for the past couple of years. I mean, as soon as the greater part of the turnaround within the club was done, much of my attention and focus has moved into trying to change the Italian impact over how football is run, both at the league level and the federation level. It's not easy. We don't necessarily all agree. We just had an introduction of the collective rights, TV rights collectively sold, which was introduced only 3 years ago in Italy, which gave a lot of oxygen, if you want, quote unquote, to some of the mid and low team, and that kind of decreased their necessity to find new ways to generating revenues as they saw their turnovers in some cases even increased by 100% just because of the collective rights system. So it is difficult at the moment to bring some changes, but we're certainly focused on trying to do that. That is a generic conversation which applies into the professional scheme of professional players in which Italy is treated, which is a law that dates back to 1981. It's got to do with trademark protection. It's got to do with the quality of the stadiums. It's got to do with the overall number of the teams. It's got to do with the possibility of having second teams, etc. So it's actually be part of something that we are studying, but it's a greater change of the whole system. When you talk about Super League, I think at the moment we are extremely happy and satisfied with what the Champions League has been doing. If anything, if we were to concentrate at both UEFA and ECA level, it's to increase the value of the Europa League. At the moment, the gap between two competitions, it's way too high, as one is generating about 1.5, 1.6 billion, and the other one is generating 200, 300 million. When the numbers are going to be close to and exceeding 2 billion in the next cycle, but it's so disproportionate between UCL and Europa League. So that's where we have to be tackling. It's growing the Europa League in order to make the two competition financially more similar. It is obvious, I think Edgar can confirm that the fashion that the Champions League has vis-a-vis any other competition, it's unbeatable. And that's what every player dreams to be. But if I think about that Champions League, what is the main competitor of the Champions League? I take the NFL in the States. The NFL turnover is about 10 billion versus not even 2 billion of Champions League. So you can see there is a massive space for improvement.
And Edgar, just related to that question, do you think players are playing too many games, the top players in Europe?
Well, you have to also look at the competitions, but I think that there are a lot of games played, and yeah, you mentioned before maybe a Super League or whatever, but I think that it's going to, maybe on this short term, be unrealistic, because what you already mentioned, there are a lot of games played, and if you look at that, also in some competitions like in England, you have like 2 or 3 cups where a team has to be active. That's not even including an European Cup. So you have to have a very thick squad with, how can I say, also a very good bench. So if you look at that, you go back to the financial fair play again. So I think, yes, there's a lot of games been played, but maybe the season has to be longer or games has to be less, I think, because if you play too much, you're going to get less quality. And I think that everybody is entitled to have everybody on his maximum strength and to watch also quality games. And I think that we have to revise that and see in the future how we can or continue playing all those games.
Okay. If there are no more questions, one question here. This will be the last question as we've reached our time limit.
Hello, my name is Kaoru Kozuka from the Nikkan Gendai, the newspaper, and I'd like to ask to Mr. David. And last year, in Confederation Cup, Japan national team was beaten by Italian team. It was 3-4, I think. And did you see the game? And how?
Didn't see it.
Oh, you
What?
didn't. I would like to ask, how did you think about the Japanese team that time?
No, I didn't really watch those games, but considering that Japan was already there, it's very important because they represent their region, and I think it's very important for the Japanese to be on that stage, because when you do that, you inspire younger talents to be a football player. And I think that a lot of players, like myself, are influenced by what other guys has done in the past in the national team, because that's a stage and it's also televised nationally. So that's why I said it's very important for Japan to be there in the first place, because there are also other countries who are not represented there. So that means they're already having a big step in the right direction. Also now when they're qualified for the World Cup. So I think that Japan is in a good direction to take their lead again in the Asian division.
Okay, that'll have to conclude it. But before we go, we'd like to thank our guests, Andrea Agnelli and Edgar Davids, and give them a one-year honorary membership of the club for their presence here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.